So we're ready to glue up. We've got the legs, rails together, rounded over the end of the tenon. The haunches are cut. I've had a dry run. I make sure everything fits first. Make sure you have everything organized. What you need is a hammer. A couple of hammers will help. And the clamps are ready. So I've got them marked. So I'm going to run the glue on my tenon. Just even out the glue a little bit. Now you want to put enough glue on there, but not too much. Too much is always arguable, but you want enough to lubricate. Make sure it doesn't freeze as you're driving this joint together. That can be a real pain. It happens from time to time. You have to move quickly now, so I'm going in, rocking my tenon, get it seated. That's all you need. And then the opposite side will be this one. That's A and that's A, so I know this one goes in there. Same again. Now I like to run a bead of glue inside the rim of the mortise hole if the end of the tenon doesn't matter, which is the case with this one. So I'm going to put a little bead of glue just along here. Most of this will get pushed out the other side, but it will help to lubricate the joint as it goes in. So here again, make sure it seats. That's one side done. That one's not seated because the tenon is protruding, so there you go. Now we're seated. So we got the opposite side now. I'm going to put the glue on my tenon. I don't know if you can see this or not. The whole of the face of the tenon. I don't bother about the sides of the tenons. It's not really necessary. This is the main glue surface here. And right into the haunches too. Same on this one. I love gluing up. It's that point of risk, irreversibility, whatever we call it. But it's also a conclusion of all the joinery that you've been working on, and you're pulling it all together. Take care not to get it on. I got a bit close there to my tenon, but okay. And then just the inside rim on the top one. Like that. There. And then bring these together. Seated nicely, and just check for any real run out or anything like that. Now I just need to put the clamps on. Try to be ready for every eventuality. I'm going to put 2 clamps per tenon here. I've got pads on my clamps so they don't damage the surface. These clamps are fairly inexpensive, and you can never have enough clamps really. So my shoulders have clamped up very nicely. I'm going just inside the shoulder line of my top and bottom rail, allowing a little bit for adjustment. This needs to lie flush here. This one here is just a hair lower. There you go. And you want to make sure your clamps are parallel, because the only problem is if you don't have them parallel is you can clamp your frames out of square. This would be hard to do on a project like this. To help those joints seat, just one hit there and another hit here. Those are closed up perfectly. And then we flip over. With this, with these shoulder lines being so far apart with the wide leg, it's better to put a clamp on either side, because it can twist slightly. Yeah, these are cinching up with almost no pressure from the clamps at all, which is what I checked for. That's why I did the rehearsal. I wanted to make sure that nothing was hanging up. Make them parallel to the rail, and you can check for square with the tape, but there's really very little point. And that's me glued up, really. I don't have any gaps or shoulder line gaps. That's great. I'm going to check from the inside corner of the top of my rail to the top corner, just to make sure. 35 7/8 and 35 7/8, and that's it, we're done. We're going to put the frame together now, stand the bench up and all of that, get the assembly done. To show you what we're actually going to do is we're going to put the bear on top of here. This will fit into this recess, and it has a wedge that'll hold it. So first of all, pre-drill my holes. Here. And then along the center, three. I'm going to run a bead of glue along here, like this. This bearer that we're putting on now is so we can anchor from the underneath into the bench top. It eliminates having metal in the physical top, which is always a danger. If you've got chisels and you're placing them down, you don't want them to get damaged. So, make sure they seat properly so that there's nothing between the bench top and the bearer. That's that. Now we're going to put the first apron to the first frame. I want you to be able to see inside here, see how it goes together. I've got to bore some holes, and I've got a bracing bit. You could use the drill driver if you want to, that's fine. This frame I'll lie down for a minute. So now I'm going to attach the apron to the main frame, one of the leg frames. It's a bit tricky on your own. If you've got two people, that would be great. But I'm struggling through this because I want to simulate what you may have to deal with. So just to secure this temporarily, I'm going to bring a clamp in just to keep the housing dado in place while I bore through from this outside. I think I'm going to put my wedge in now. I've got wedges cut that go in here, and you can see how when you're racking this bench back and forth, this wedge will keep dropping and dropping and dropping permanently. And to keep that in place, I've got a little mechanism here where this will pivot out of the way. So I'm going to drill that now. This will keep the wedge in place. Just loose enough to be able to pivot that out of the way. So that's going to tighten that leg against this outside wall. So now I've got that, I can tighten the wedge. I can even beat on the wedge if I want to. So that's got it locked in place. You can see how rigid this is now. So I want to bore through from the outside. Remember, my bench is going to be used for transportation. I'm going to take it with me on different shows and venues where I do demonstrations. So I want to have this bench with me. So I'm going to bore through from this side, from the outside through to the inside, and put one of the bolts through. I want to make sure that I am below the rail. I don't want to go too high, so just measure down from the top of my bench. So I've got a place there, just eyeballing this for centre of my leg there. Now I'm going to bore a hole through. These are surprisingly fast. This was the first ever cordless drill. So I'm through my apron. Pull out some of that waste. I'm using a 1/2 inch drill here. I want a bit of movement laterally, and my bolts are 7/16. So I'm through. Pull out the waste. It's the wedge really that holds the bench dead rigid, and that, you can't lose sight of that. This bolt is not really meant for that. I'm going to leave that at that and cinch it up tight later. It's not going to come apart now. I can take my clamp off. And now I'm going to do the same to the other end. This is nice and rigid now. You can see how rigid this whole frame is. I've got a couple of things that I need to do to the other frame because I'm putting a tail vise on mine, and you may want to do the same with yours. So if you remember, part of my provision was to make a part of the frame here where the vise can go under. So my tail vise is going to go through here. So I set this rail lower. Now I'm going to put my plate on the top like this bearer, like this. But in between I want to still transfer the bench top through to the main H-frame. So I'm going to put a plate, a piece of wood, a billet of wood inside here that will carry that weight down, and my tail vise, the mechanism for the vise, will go through the inside here. So first I want to screw this to the top of the frame. I've already pre-drilled this one. I like to pre-drill even if I'm using self-drilling screws. A bit old-fashioned, I like to take out that portion. One more long one. And my top bearer, again, drill it, pre-drill. Oops. A knot there, and then a couple into the bearer along that centre. Glue again, just to make sure everything is seated. There's my middle portion. This is kind of exciting, really. You get to the part where you're actually going to be putting your frame together. Whoop. Just line this up with the outside of your frame. Alright, now I'm ready to put the other end on, so you can follow me to the other end.